My name is Levi, and welcome to our Sunday gathering. If you've been coming around to Contrast for a while, hi again. If this is your first time or you are newer, we are pumped you are here. We have all been there before, and we know that finding a church home can be hard sometimes. So we do our best to make it as easy, real, and fun as possible. We are definitely not perfect, but hope that you'll get a small, authentic glimpse into our church family today. Our only ask is that you participate in the opportunity to make yourself known in our community. Whether that be with our host after the gathering, filling out a form, or just literally tapping someone on the shoulder and telling them it's your first time and you want friends. Our mission is to help people follow Jesus in his way together. Today is a 70-minute glimpse of that as we worship, celebrate, and learn about God's truths. If you've brought kids with you, they will experience a similar time with our awesome volunteers. While our Sundays are awesome, we have many other opportunities to get involved throughout the week, like joining a missional community or corps, serving, or contributing financially to the mission and vision of our church. If you have any questions at all or want to chat, our host will be up in a few moments and they would love to connect with you in whatever way you need. We hope you have a great time as we gather as family today and worship God together.
Good morning, Contrast. We're so glad you guys are here today. My name is Elena. If we haven't met, in addition to being on staff here, I get to serve on the worship team. And as some of you may know, our amazing worship director, TJ, is getting married today, which is very exciting. So I get to fill in for him today and lead us through our time of Selah and some worship through song. So if you are unfamiliar with the flow of our gatherings, we like to start by taking a moment to recenter ourselves and ground ourselves and prepare for an encounter with the Lord through worship and scripture. So today I'm going to be sharing a passage from the book of Joel, which my core group was reading this week. And what really struck me about this book is it is Old Testament prophecy about the Babylonian exile, but in the midst of talking about all of this hardship, there is still this amazing through line of hope and the Lord's heart for redemption and just his desire for relationship with his people. So I'm going to share, this is from the 2nd chapter, verses 23 through 29. Be glad, O children of Zion, and rejoice in the Lord your God, for he has given the early rain for your vindication. He has poured down for you abundant rain, the early and the latter rain as before. The threshing floors shall be full of grain, the vats shall overflow with wine and oil. I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten, the hopper, the destroyer, and the cutter, the great army which I sent among you. You shall eat in plenty and be satisfied, and praise the name of the Lord your God, who has dealt wondrously with you. And my people shall never again be put to shame. You shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I am the Lord your God, and there is none else. And my people shall never again be put to shame. And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions. Even on the male and female servants in those days I will pour out my spirit. When you're ready, let's stand and worship together. to be overcome by your presence, I don't want anything but you. You're more than every dream come true. All of the things I thought I wanted don't come close to knowing you. Now that I'm yours and you are mine, our love is a secret that I find. I'll spend forever in the pleasure I found looking in your eyes. Give me Jesus, give me Jesus. You can have all this world. You can have all this world. More than silver, more than gold. You are the treasure that I hold. Now that I've tasted of your goodness, nothing else will satisfy. Give me Jesus.
Lord Jesus, thank you for gathering us together today. Lord, thank you for your love and mercy. And Lord, I pray today that we would just lay everything down at your feet, that we would be receptive to what you have for us today, and that, we give all of ourselves to you, Lord, and that we can carry everything that we learn into this week. Lord, we love you so much. Amen.
Good morning. You can have a seat. Hello, everyone. I'm Brock. Whether you've been here before or you're new here, we're so happy you're here. If you are new here or you've been coming around, there's a QR code in the back of all of these chairs. Feel free to give that a scan. It'll also be up behind me. That is our one-stop shop for everything Contrast, whether that be serving, whether that be what's going on, whether that be events in the future. That is your one-stop shop, and remember that code because we will talk about that later. And also, we are a storytelling church, and so we believe in telling our story in different capacities. Today is a special edition of that, as we're going to be talking about core groups. Someone welcome up Hannah to the stage.
Hannah and friends, so if you're on my panel, now is your cue. We're going to try to spread out better than we did in the 8 a.m. We were all just right here, so. Welcome, guys. Okay, friends, well, for you who don't know me, I am Hannah, and I'm the executive director here at Contrast, but a big part of what I get to do is core groups and helping set a lot of our communities, and I love that part of my job. So this morning, we were brainstorming how to help you guys understand and know a little bit more about core groups as we're going to kick off a new core semester in about a month, and we were like, what better way than to have people who have been in core for the last semester, last year, a couple years, to tell you guys about why you should be in a core, unpaid advertisements right here. So just in case you're unfamiliar, cores are one of our main forms of community here at Contrast, and they are small, usually single gender groups that go through what we call the CORE acronym, and so it stands for confession, outreach, reading, and encouragement. And so I just want to ask them a couple questions and have them kind of talk about their experience this morning. So the first question I want to ask you guys, first you can introduce yourself. If you want to say whose group you're in, you can. But tell us, what's your favorite thing about CORE?
Hi, good morning. I'm Ava. I'm in Caroline Hoover's CORE. I would say that my favorite thing about CORE is just having a dedicated time to be with a group of women that are really pouring into me and leading and teaching me. It's just been a really transformative time, and it's just fun to hang out with a group of girls each week.
My name is Spencer, and I'm in Trent Marion's CORE, also known as the Best CORE. So, I just, moving here, I don't feel like I had a large sense of community, and just to be able to just dive in with a group of guys, and just the overall just act of confession, and just how open and honest they were, just helped me really just understand the feel of the Contrast community. So I'd say that's like my favorite part, and just I love getting to know the guys that I'm with.
My name is John, and I've been part of CORE about a year since we moved here. In Paul's CORE group, Paul Burke, and I thought the $500 initiation fee was a little. Paul's like cash, Venmo, don't tell anyone. That was weird. I was like, but my favorite part of CORE is probably the hardest and the best part, which I would say the confessional part of it. You have a lot of churches that will preach confession is core to being a follower of Jesus, but don't create avenues or an atmosphere to do that. And so confession being part of core groups has been really encouraging to see that, you can really celebrate people's accomplishments, but also you can really echo with people's struggles or addictions or sin patterns in their lives. And it is a quick way to really grow close to people and also be part of growth and change. And so that's what I enjoy about CORE.
I'm Lex. I'm in Esther Webb's CORE, a very elite one. My favorite part about CORE is just the very quick, deep friendships that you form, and just the trust and vulnerability that comes with it. And then also just how these women have pulled me back in, and I would hope and think that the same for them in seasons where you're not feeling maybe as close to the Lord, they continue to pull you back in a way that coming to church on Sunday maybe just can become a little bit of a tradition or something like that. There's no room for just tradition there. You have to bring your whole self. So that's what I love.
That's so great. Thanks, guys. So my last question for you is, CORE is a commitment. We expect you to show up every week, to be fully a part of it, to do the reading. And so some people are really on the fence about this, especially if this is like a new practice for them to jump into. So for someone who's hesitant to commit to this, what would you say to convince them that CORE is worth it?
Yeah, I would say, honestly, like, just take the leap and do it. I know that a lot of times we have other time commitments with work, social life, family, things like that. But I came to Contrast and joined a CORE without knowing anyone here. And it's just been really life-giving over the last year. So yeah, I would just say, like, you can make time for it. The Bible calls us to be in community with one another, and it really will transform your life.
Yeah, I'd echo on that a little bit. Yeah, it's definitely worth the time commitment to just take the time out of your week to be able to do it. And yeah, if you're on the fence about it, just take the leap and do it. I feel like whether you've been following Christ for 10 years or if you gave your life to him yesterday, I feel like it's just a good practice to get into. And I think especially just with the church group that we have, there's no reason to be worried to go and just get to know your community and just be close with a close group of people. And just the love that I felt from my core group is awesome, and it's just so worth the time commitment.
My encouragement to someone who is kind of questioning or hesitant to join is you need to see core group as a spiritual discipline. Being part of a community is the same as reading scripture, prayer, solitude, meditation, all those things that you are built to be in community. And that's in the season of my life where I've had times of depression or health problems. I feel like our faith is carried in community of times of struggles, of pain. And so core group is a place that is designed, like, if you need encouragement, to receive encouragement. And we are our own worst counselors. You need people outside yourself to speak truth over you in times where you're feeding yourself lies, and people to carry your burdens and your sufferings. And core creates a place where you can develop deep relationships that are genuine, that are honest, that people can minister to you, but also an opportunity for you to really care and minister to other people.
Hard to follow. My favorite part, or wait, that's not the right question.
You can tell us more favorite things
This
that
is going to be more of it.
especially because Lex came from Grace UA.
Yes,
So
I did come from Grace. So I was in a Grace group at UA, and I loved my Grace group, don't get me wrong, but it was very different where you didn't have as much as the confession and vulnerability component of it. And so my personal reason or excuse to be scared to do a core was just that I didn't really feel like a good enough Christian to be in a group like this surrounded by such amazing people. I had grown up in the Catholic Church and then actually just really strayed away from the Lord for many years. And so it was a bit daunting. And what I would say to people who are experiencing something similar or just any of your own reasons is that you would be surprised by how much the Lord works through these people in this community to help free you of any guilt that you may be feeling from your past, to help make you feel safe, and just to bring him closer to you. And also just there's little things that people can really relate to that you may have not expected, and like we're all just human. So I think that any excuse that you may have, you'll be pleasantly surprised by how wonderful it can be.
yes, that's great. Thanks, guys. So practically, if you're sitting there and you're like, okay, they did just negate every single one of my excuses, I should do this, you can sign up, fill out our core interest form on the QR code. If you still have more questions that are unanswered, you can find me, you can find Trent Marion, he's our men's communities director, Trey, Joe Wallach, any of us would be happy to talk through this a little bit more practically. We offer groups that meet early in the morning. We offer groups that meet almost every single weeknight. We offer mostly single gender, 4 to 5 people male or female. And then we do offer a few iterations of a co-ed type model. So we have lots of different ways that you can get connected. So you let us know how we can help you jump into this if this feels overwhelming or scary, or maybe you're like, nope, I'm convinced, just let me do it. Fill the form out, and we are making groups in the next couple of weeks. And so then we'll kick it off at the beginning of September. So give it up for our friends.
Bobby decided to go to church this morning, but instead of volunteers, Bobby found voluntary tears. Tears in the parking lot. Inside the building. At the coffee cart. At the kids' ministry. Bobby was lonely. He needed volunteers. But then he woke up from a horrible nightmare and found, well, Bobby found joy. People with purpose. Unity of heart. Humility. Care. Compassion. Because Sundays are better with volunteers.
Wow. Some of you are like, what AI did you pay? Jess Kutzer made that. She's a real human. Goes to our church, so yeah. So most leadership gurus will tell you that when you try to cast vision, you just have one thing, right? You just focus on it, and you're just like, one thing they remember. I think you guys are smarter than that. I think that today you can remember two things, okay? And to make this even more impressionable on you, you know, some things are just better together, right? Like a duo, you know? Like a Wendy's Frosty and the French fries, right? Yes, anybody? Yes, we know that. Yeah, I mean, I don't even think you can order them separate anymore. Frodo and Sam, okay? Let's get a little more edgy. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. Watermelon and salt, okay? Butter noodles and ketchup. Oh, there's my people. Pickles and vanilla ice cream. Okay, yeah, that one, yeah, we ended there. All right, what's better than a PB&J? Come on. All right. So we have this wonderful QR code on these Uncrustables. Welch's does not know that we did this, so don't tell them because they love to sue people. And so this has our QR code on it, and the way it works is we have, I don't know how many we have left, maybe 80, maybe 100, who knows, out there in the lobby after service. And because we're casting 2 vision points, we want you to join a core, that's the peanut butter, and then we want you to serve, that's the jelly. Okay, you got to have them both to get the points. No, but you can grab one of these on the way out, and then our challenge to you is you scan the QR code, you fill out both those forms in the time that it takes to thaw. Because if you didn't know, you freeze these, and if you eat them right away, they're like a brick. So you need 10 minutes to let them thaw. And so this is our reminder, and you'll never forget that today's PB&J Sunday. And mine is actually thawed out. Does anybody want this right now? Anybody? Yes, there we go, Sarah. All you. You can eat. I'm going to give you permission. You can eat that the whole sermon if you want, okay? Just be like, everyone's jealous. Core group and serving, they'll change your life. We are moving to 2 locations in the fall in 5 weeks, 4 weeks. And we have 100 volunteers that we need every Sunday to make it happen. And so here's my ask to you. Obviously, the core group stuff was great. But service team, if you've come to our church more than 3 times, it's time to serve. If you have kids, we will figure it out. If you don't like being around people, we will figure it out. If you love people too much, we'll definitely figure that out. If you're afraid of the espresso machine, we'll also figure that out. And then lastly, if you don't like being out in the cold parking lot in the winter, there's nothing we can do about that. That is just, somebody has to do it. So if you're into cold plunge therapy, there's a really similar correlation there. Maybe you can try that. But all right, smooth transition into our series. We are in a series called Unsung Heroes. If you got your Bibles, we're going to go to the book of Numbers, which is more than Numbers, but called Numbers.
And while you're turning there, we've had some awesome characters the last several weeks this summer. Got a couple more coming down the pipeline until our sort of vision casting for our fall. And then into the fall, we're going through 1 Corinthians for like a million weeks. So excited for that. But today, we're going to talk about a man in the Bible who I think I would call a headstone character. There's some people in the Bible who like don't have a lot about them, but they have these phrases that I think are like what I would want on my tombstone. If you've ever thought about that, maybe it feels a little morbid for you, but when you die, you get a stone. Depending on how much money you have, depends on how big the stone is usually. But you get like a phrase, maybe a couple words. If you're really rich, maybe a picture, or you get a whole crypt. I don't know. But what is like that phrase, right, that you want your life to be known for, right? Is it like father, husband, friend, or wife, killer CEO, had lots of money? Like what do people actually put on their tombstones? And I think this is the phrase that this man had in our character today. He followed the Lord wholeheartedly. He followed the Lord wholeheartedly. It said 7 times about him. He's not a very big character, but 7 times. And each time it's almost like the story stops to remind you. In the Hebrew, it's that he was undivided, that his heart was just undivided toward the Lord and his promises. And that's the hero we're talking about today, and his name is Caleb. Anybody know the story of Caleb a little bit? Nope. All right, you got something to learn today. So the Hebrew for Caleb is Kalev, which means dog. And, in our modern culture, we're like, you dog, it means something else. Dog in this case meant like loyal, almost like think golden retriever dog, right? Like what's man's best friend then? Come on, then golden retriever. And so Caleb is the golden retriever of the Bible. He is so loyal and obedient to God, and we'll see this in a remarkable story. So as you're at Numbers, we're going to go to chapter 13. We're going to be ripping through the whole book of Numbers because I'm going to go through like 20 chapters in a story, paraphrasing. So you'll follow along and take notes if you want to. But Numbers 13, to get to this scene, the book is before that is the Exodus. And so the people of God, the chosen nation of Israel, was enslaved by Egypt. They are called out of Egypt. They travel. God does miraculous things, parts the sea, makes it rain bread, right? They follow a pillar of fire at night, cloud by day. They at this point have also been at Mount Sinai where God shakes the mountain and gives the 10 Commandments, and they learn how to follow God in the wilderness. They've also built a tabernacle, which is the portable place that God's presence meets with the people. And they've been just walking for a couple of years in the wilderness. They've got about 1 million people, and they're just waiting for the promises that God has given to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob 400 years earlier. And that's that there'll be many nations, many sons, had Father Abraham, right? More than the stars, they'll have the promised land flowing with milk and honey, because what's better than milk and honey? And so they are steps away from this promised land. They're in the oasis of Kadesh. It's in the desert. And they are literally at the finish line, excited about taking essentially the land that God had given them. But the problem is they are unsure of the promises of God. We can all relate, right? And so they are like, maybe we should send spies ahead of us to scope out the land, to figure out if we can take this promised land that God has clearly promised us and done all these other things, but we should still doubt him, right? And so they tell Moses, and Moses talks to God, and God permits it. So they gather spies, and this is where Caleb's story starts. So if you're in Numbers 13, I'm just going to read through verse 1. I'm going to be ripping around, so you can try and follow along. But it says, the Lord spoke to Moses, and he said, send out men to investigate the land of Canaan, which is the promised land, which I am giving to the Israelites. You are to send one man from each ancestral tribe, the 12 tribes of Israel, and one leader among them. And so Moses sent them out from the wilderness of Paran at the command of the Lord, and all of them were leaders of the Israelites. And so then basically you have a list of all these people. And so God tells Moses, there's 12 men total. We see a couple important people. One is Hoshea, who then has changed his name to Joshua. So Joshua, who leads the conquest into the promised lands. His name was originally Hoshea. Joshua means Yahweh saves. So Jesus' name in the Greek is Jesus. It originally Yeshua, which means Yahweh saves. Just fun fact for you, a free one there. So Joshua is one of the 12. There's 10 other guys, and the 12th is sure enough Caleb. There he is, Caleb, son of Jephunneh. Okay, so this is the crew. There's 12 tribes that make up about 1 million people, and they each would sort of collaborate together. And so they're picking the best man of each of the tribes. Could be most influenced, but also most likely most physically fit and skilled, because you're going out into these territories. They're kind of like SEALs. So they got to spy and then get away. So these are like the 12 strongest, probably best men, best warriors, or most influence. And Caleb is that of the house of Judah. So he sends them out. He says, go to the hill country, look at the land, people are, whether they're strong or weak, whether there's fortified cities or not. And then the important thing is bring back some fruit so that we may know if this land is truly habitable and flourishing of health. So they go, and here's a map. It wouldn't be a Sunday without Trey without a map, right? So here's a map. We needed it. I just think we needed it. You guys were wondering where all these places are. So this is Kadesh here. This is the little oasis wilderness. This is all like just desert, uninhabitable essentially. And they come from here, Egypt, travel down here, and then this all the way up is the promised land, okay? Wow, you zoomed in for this one. Nice, Levi. We didn't get, this is special effects for this service. So they travel up through the arrows, reaching a bunch of different cities. Hebron is one we're going to talk about later, but Hebron is a massively important city. But as they're talking, they mention the areas of Hebron, and they say that it's not only a large city fortified, full of vineyards, but it's also full of those long-necked people. I don't know about you, but you're like, what does that mean? It's tall, scary warriors, okay? So the best way I could describe this is I thought back to my childhood days of good old Space Jam. And there's a character in Space Jam. His name is Nerdluck Blanco. If you know of him, you're like, I know who he is. He's this little guy right here. And he's like super tiny, right? Okay, but then you know what happens. He steals some NBA player who I don't even remember his name, steals his talent, and then he becomes this giant guy, right? And they were called the Anak is the name of long-necked people. And so this is him, and then this is the Israelite spies. I thought I'd make a meme, make memes cool again. Somebody, first service, was almost offended that I made a meme. They were like, that's so outdated. I'm mad at you for making that. So, but they're just tall. They're super well built. Like Saul, the first king, was a tall, handsome man. Similar idea. Like if you're tall and strong, then you're a great warrior is the assumption. So all these people were really strong and great. Needless to say, it was not an easy place to take. It was difficult. And so they come back in verse 26. It says they came back to Moses and Aaron and to the whole community of Israelites. They reported to the whole land and showed the fruit. They stabbed some grapes on a stick and carried it back and said, it's great. And they said to Moses, we went where you told us. It is indeed flowing with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. They were basically like, God was right. This place is exactly like he said it would be. But, verse 28, the inhabitants are strong. The cities are fortified, and they're very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak. That's those long-necked people. And the Amalekites live in the land here, and the Hittites, and the Jebusites, and the Amorites live in all the hill country, and the Canaanites live by the sea. There's just like all these different militaristic communities. It's difficult. It's just not going to be easy. And so they're like, yeah, God is right. He did promise us this. It is true. But also there's all these circumstances that are going to make this very difficult. And so in the middle of that, verse 30, it says, Caleb silences them. The Hebrew word hasa, which means hush or shut up. He silences the people before Moses, and he says, let us go up and occupy it, for we are well able to conquer it. The men did not agree. The other men, verse 31, who had gone up with him, said, we are not able to go against these people because they are stronger than we are. And then they presented them, the Israelites, with a discouraging report, or your translation might say evil report or false report. They basically start to embellish and add falsities to scare the people from the report. And so they investigate, saying, the land we passed through to investigate is the land that devours its inhabitants. They're eating people. And all the people we saw there were of great stature. We even saw the Nephilim as the descendants of Anak who came from them there. And we seem like grasshoppers both to ourselves and to them. What they're doing is they're pulling from an older story in Genesis before the flood where there was these Nephilim, which were like giants who had died before pre-flood. And they're basically being like, yeah, they're basically them. There's giants. There's no way we can kill them or beat them. We have no chance. So they're just scaring these people. And basically what happens then is, it's 10 on 2 here. Caleb speaks. Joshua is sort of just quiet, but in agreement. We find out later. It's 10 on 2, and they discourage all the people of Israel. And they're essentially like, oh my gosh, we shouldn't go. We can't do this, right? Even though they know that this is exactly the way the Lord had orchestrated it, and they knew that this is the place that God had promised then. And so what happens is they disbelieve, and they throw a fit, and God obviously gets angry, which is a lot of the journey of the Israelites, is Moses being like, I'm so sorry, our people are the worst. And God's like, yes, they are. And so God is like mad. How long do these people despise me? How long do they refuse to believe in everything I've done, which he's done quite a bit, quite a resume. And so then he declares a consequence because of their lack of belief. He doesn't want one person from this generation, everyone 20 years and older, to see the promised land. And he says they will die in the wilderness 1 year for every day they spent in the land. So they spent 40 days of spying, and so 40 days in the wilderness in the desert they shall be. And so the assumption there is that a generation is about 40 years in this time. So it's like one whole generation will die before the promised land. Then he says, only my servant Caleb, and later he brings up Joshua in it too, but because he had a different spirit and he followed me wholeheartedly. There it is again. I will bring him into the land where he had gone, and his descendants will possess it. His descendants is a key importance as God makes this promise to Caleb. And it says, now the Amalekites and the Canaanites were living in the valleys where they were at. And so God said, tomorrow turn around and journey into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. If you don't realize, that's going back where they came from. The great old parting of the Red Sea. It's like, yeah, I'm just going to re-part it. We can just get a redo. Okay, we'll get a redo. And so he tells them to go back. And so what happens, though, it's a kind of a wild story. The people are really sad. They're like, oh my gosh, we screwed up, right? Classic Israel. We screwed up, and they're like mourning and they're sad. And they give just enough lip service to be like, and then the next morning they're like, I think God forgave us. And so they're like, we're going to go up and battle. And Moses is like, no, you're not. Like, yeah, we are. Because we're not going back to the Red Sea. And so they get up, and Moses is like, all right, well, I'm not going, and the ark's not going, so good luck. And they go up, and they try to take the promised lands, and that's why it brings up the Amalekites and the Canaanites on the edge of the border. They run them out of the hills. So they try, and they just fail. But I was talking to somebody about this. I think it's a fair idea. Because if someone told you, hey, you screwed up, you're going to spend 40 years in this dirt, and you're going to die, you're like, maybe he forgave us the next day, and we should try again. And so they get run off, and they're back into the desert backwards for 40 years. If you're wondering about the spies, they were punished pretty quickly. They got the plague and died like immediately. So all the false testimonies of these spies, the strongest of each tribe, was killed except for Joshua and Caleb. It's fascinating to me that we can mourn and repent, but still have an agenda of what we want God to do. Right? We can be sorry for our sin, but then not actually want the consequences to be real. And what's remarkable about this is they spend 38 more years in the wilderness, and poor Caleb and Joshua have to be a part of this. Like, the consequences of the community affect even the righteous people. And I think that's so true in church. Like, this to be true. Like, a really healthy person is like a light with moths. Like, everybody wants to become healthy, and they surround themselves around healthy people, and they want to become healthy, and it a lot of times affects the people in a really beautiful way. However, the opposite is also true, that really unhealthy people can do this beautiful thing of just creating havoc, right, everywhere they are. And it affects people who are doing really well, or healthy, or have good intentions. This is how you know this, because when you go to family dinner for Thanksgiving, you're just trying to live your life. You're just trying to be emotionally healthy. And then Uncle Lewis says something, and it unleashes something in you that you didn't even know you had. And before you know, everyone's throwing punches at the dinner table. And that was not our Thanksgiving, but some of you for sure, I'm sure, right? But it's this reality of the consequences of people's behavior and sins don't just affect them, right? They have this ability to cause massive implications for everybody else. And so Caleb and Joshua have to walk in the desert for 38 years. But imagine what they could think. They could be like, man, we were right all along, and they just didn't trust us, and now I have to deal with these people, right? And they're all, I'm going to see them all die out in the wilderness, but God didn't let us go, right? Imagine the bitterness that they could have, right? And the story of the wilderness, there's not a lot to it. There's not a lot of stories in it. It's pretty boring, pretty slow, exactly what you think it'd be. But we then move to Numbers 20 and then Numbers 26, basically all the stories leading up to that. And even Moses gets so sick of these people that he slips up, right? And he smashes the rock for water, and God's like, you done it, and now you can't go into the promised land. So out of 1 million people, right, this one generation, including Moses, are not able to go into the promised land. Only Joshua and only Caleb. And so in Numbers 26, if you want to keep going, in verse 64, it reminds them of this. Remember, this is decades. They had to be reminded. There was not a man among them who had been among those numbered by Moses and Aaron the priest when they numbered them previously, that were left alive. And so the Lord had said, they will surely die in the wilderness, and there was not a single man left of them except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, son of Nun. Fast forward then to Numbers 32. It says this again. And if you were just reading through Numbers, you wouldn't even notice. like I said it again, except for in verse 12, Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, and Joshua, son of Nun, for they followed the Lord wholeheartedly. Now, what's interesting here is they're making preparations for who basically gets to conquer certain areas and then have land. Because the point of this culture is that you only have eternity, you only have prosperity if you have generational inheritance in land. This is like the same idea. So God's blessing in the Old Testament is his presence among the people in their territory and their kingdoms. Now, we obviously at this point in our world, we still have wars over borders, but for the most part, most of the land is claimed, minus Antarctica, but that's for its own reasons. And so, like, there's not these battles of, like, I need this land for my generations. Now we do this with home ownership, maybe, and we're like, this is our home, and I hope 400 years later my great-great-great-grandkids live in this home, right? Most of us know the home won't even be standing then, but we have this idea, right, of, like, what are we going to pass on? What is our inheritance? And so in this culture, it was land. Land was the promise of blessing, and it was God's blessing of a physical reality that showed the power of God and his presence spiritually. And so if it was cursed, it was the removal of God's presence. Oftentimes then, the removal, like the tabernacle, right? If God's presence was not there, they did not receive blessing, and they wouldn't win wars. And so the promised land is God's permanent solution for stability and inheritance for the people of God. That's the point. The reason why this matters is all of a sudden now we have Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, sorry, hard to say, 2 Z's. Kenizzite. Why does that matter? Well, the Kenizzites, if you know anything about it, which you probably do, you probably did a Bible study last night, you were so excited preparing for this, that you read about the Kenizzites, and you read that in Genesis 15:19, God lists the Kenizzites as one of the enemy nations whose land was going to be taken by the Israelites in the promised land. And you probably read that, and you're like, that's crazy. And then you read even more, and you realize that they were actually also descendants of Esau, who then were removed from the blessing of God because Esau was hungry and sold his birthright. And then you also are trying to do the math, and you're like, well, how is Caleb a part of this culture, this millions of people? And then you get into more research, and you're really excited. It's 1 a.m. And then you realize that when they exiled, it was a huge historical event, and a lot of tribes around the area would actually join to them and start to follow Yahweh, even though they weren't true Israelites. And so most likely, either he was just attached to this place by chance, or his mom married someone in Israel, and then he was born essentially in this journey. Why does this matter? If you remember back to the story, 12 spies, the best man of every tribe, and the best man of the tribe of Judah was a Kenizzite. It was someone who was not born into the house of Israel, somebody who did not understand in the same way the assumption of what they got and received. This is the one who God loves, and Caleb, he follows wholeheartedly, and he brings up his name because they're about to establish who's going to get what land. And he's like, yeah, that Caleb, the Kenizzite, yeah, he's going to get some land. The other 10, even, you could argue Joshua was sort of half in there at the time. All these other ones who had a natural biological claim had no faith in who God was and what he could do. Isn't that so true in the church? Sometimes the people who grew up in the church have the most disillusioned understanding of God. And you don't understand how it's possible. You're like, man, VeggieTales is a pretty solid curriculum. I'm being dead serious. I freaking love VeggieTales. It's the best. But you're like, how do these people hear all these stories and grow up in all this and like do all this stuff and learn all the things and then all of a sudden like be so they just miss it. And then say, well, have you read about the story of the Pharisees and how they knew all the stuff? And then Jesus is like, yeah, you're far from the kingdom. And so I love this story about Caleb because in some ways it convicts us if we're like thinking we deserve something that we don't, or that we grew up in the faith and so we just think we can borrow our parents' faith until we die. And Caleb is this feisty, just passionate guy who comes in as an outsider and somehow is the most capable man in an entire thousands and thousands of people to be a spy who then also pushes against the worries and the lies of these other people. So that at 1 a.m. is why you studied why Caleb is a Kenizzite. Let's get to Joshua. Let's get to the battles. Action time. Here we go. All right, so skip through Deuteronomy into Joshua. Joshua takes over leadership from Moses. Moses does not give it to any of his sons because they were duds. And so he gives it to Joshua. And Joshua then starts this journey. Moses writes Deuteronomy. He's all the laws before he dies. And then Joshua starts to take land, right? But it's unique how they do it. There's many crazy stories. If you've heard the story of Jericho or Rahab and the spies or the sun stopping in the middle of battle, which is a scientific nightmare to parse through. And there's 7 years of battles, and these battles are sort of all around the fringes of that territory that I had showed you. But by Joshua 11, it's clear that they had basically cleared out most of the large battles of people in this land. And it says that they, even in Joshua 11, at the time, Joshua went and destroyed the Anakites from the hill country of Hebron. Yes, the long-necked people. Take that. It says that Joshua totally destroyed them in their towns. And no Anakites were left in the Israelite territory. So 38 years in the wilderness, followed by 7 more years of battle, 7 of which Caleb is battling as an old man for land that he had to wait for generations to basically be willing to walk in faith and not in discouragement. Because what's crazy is none of the circumstances changes. Like the Anakites are still there the whole time. All the Canaanites, nothing changes except the generational movement of a heart towards God and a trust in him. That's the only thing that changes. The circumstances are exactly the same. Joshua takes these troops, they win all these battles, right? And then what happens is it gets to this unique sort of like guerrilla warfare where they need to start taking out smaller factions in these different areas. And as they do that, that's then where they would establish their towns. So the larger battles had been won. They're then all of a sudden now figuring out by casting lots who will have to take certain battles and then in turn then get that land, right? It's kind of the final like acts of the battle, because the battles took a long time. And so they're like, there's certain places that you really want. There's certain places that you're like, I don't want to go there because I'll lose a lot of troops or it's well fortified, or right? And so they're like, let's just cast lots, right? Because they're like, don't want to take ownership. But sure enough, we forgot about our good old Caleb, who's a well 85 years old. And it says this in Joshua 14:6, while they're about to cast lots, the men of Judah, they appoint Joshua, approach him in Gilgal, they're ready to cast lots. And it says, Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to him, you know what the Lord said about you and me to Moses, the man of God at Kadesh Barnea, which is the desert. I was 40 years old when Moses, the Lord's servant, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy in the land, and I brought back to him an honest report. My countrymen who accompanied me frightened the people, but I remained loyal to the Lord my God. And that day Moses made his solemn promise. He said, surely the land on which you walked will belong to you and to your descendants permanently. For you remained loyal to the Lord your God. So now look, the Lord has preserved my life, just as he promised, these past 45 years since the Lord spoke these words to Moses while Israel traveled through the wilderness. See, here I am today 85 years old. Today I am still as strong as when Moses sent me out. I don't know about that, but he says, I can fight and I can go about my daily activities with the same energy I had, then I don't need a walker. Now assign me the hill country that the Lord promised me at that time. Now keep reading here. It gets weird. No doubt you heard then that the Anakites live there in large fortified cities. But assuming the Lord is with me, I will conquer them as the Lord has promised. And so Joshua asked God to empower Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and assign him Hebron. And so Hebron remains the assigned land of Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, to this very day because he remained loyal to the Lord God of Israel. Now, what a story. I mean, I don't, like, if this was a movie, I just picture, like, him being like, I'm 85 and I'm in good shape, and like a montage of like him like working out in the desert, you know, like a bench, just doing bench pressing and maybe some CrossFit, probably some ropes out in the desert. But 85 years old and is like, let's take the hill, right? What's unique about the story is you're probably, if you're following along, you're like, well, wait, didn't they already drive them all out? It just said Joshua drove them all out. It's very true. 2 options. One is this is written slightly later, and it just in the narrative of the story they put it later, but he eventually does drive them out. The other option, which I think is more likely, is that when they went through these large battles, they went quickly and swiftly, and so people that ran away came back a few years later and have refortified the city, which is more likely. And so he goes back because there's a history of their leader, whose name is Arba, and he's known as the giant of giants. You see, everybody wants to talk about David slaying Goliath, but I want to talk about Caleb slaying Arba. Arba is a giant of giants among the long-necked people who came back into a well-fortified city. So he has to fight them again. Nobody wants it. They want to cast lots for it. An 85-year-old man said, I know the promise of God, and I've lived it, and we're going to go, and we're going to take that land. Caleb is a little off his rocker. Mind my pun there, because he's old. But he is like, this guy, I mean, you can't make this up. Like, there's just something about him when you read this story that he has this separation from everybody else. Like he's just this passionate zeal, like just so full of a confidence in who God is. And he even says, if God allows it, he's like, could die, I don't know, right? But I haven't lived this long to not learn what it means to walk wholeheartedly with the Lord. So sure enough, he takes over Hebron, and the rest is history, and kills Arba. I don't know if he did a slingshot, but pretty cool story, right? Now, if we just put a nice ending on this, we'd be like, that was a great story. Caleb, what a man, what a faithful man, just the fidelity of faith, no matter the consequences. He's an outsider. I love a good story of an underdog, right? He lives purely by faith, not family privilege. He does not give up on the promises and the blessing. He sees a moment of adversity as a challenge before God, not before man, and he's faithful to it for decades. And he actually doesn't succumb to their problems like Moses does in the desert. So in some ways, Caleb is this beautiful story of just someone whose heart is sold out for God. Now, what's really cool about this story and what I love about this series, and you can't always do it super easy, but the unsung here is the point of the stories of why we're doing this is not just to be hipster and talk about characters you didn't know about in the Bible. It's to communicate that God's love and the story of Jesus is laced all throughout the scriptures and building to the culmination of who Jesus is for us. And so as we receive the inheritance of what Jesus promises us, relationship with God, as I talked about the land in the Old Testament, how important that was to the inheritance of the people, this is exactly what Caleb is alluding to, as he knows that Hebron has this special pull in his heart, that he feels like that is the land that God has promised for him, and he does not care who is in the way. If God has promised that land, he's going to take that land because that's his goal and his destiny for his life, to be faithful to God. But what's important is we understand the idea of an inheritance in the land. You see, in this context, Caleb is going to inherit a land that it says for descendants forever will have health and flourishing, right? So this is his kingdom. This is his inheritance of his kingdom and blessing before God. Jesus enters the scene and he talks about how the kingdom is near. And everyone's like, well, yeah, there's Rome and there's the religious leaders, right? The king, of course, there's these kingdoms. And Jesus is like, no, this is a different type of kingdom, right? This is not a kingdom that's based on physical borders. This is a kingdom about the sovereignty and the power of God being unleashed on the people of the world. And you get to be a part of that. And then he gives this profound sermon. He says, blessed are these people. They get that kingdom. And everyone's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Because I have 500 acres, but everything you're saying in order to get in that kingdom has nothing to do with my land. But the Old Testament is an understanding of God's blessing of land into a spiritual reality, because this was generations of flourishing and the shalom that the people of Israel longed for. And so he gives Caleb a kingdom. And then Jesus later uses a Greek word for inherit, which has the origins back to Caleb receiving his kingdom, that says this kingdom is now for you. And this is this kingdom for eternity, that you'll be in relationship with God, the presence of God, the Garden of Eden, right? Walking hand in hand without any of the mess of sin and of the chaos of the world. And so Jesus shifts this in Matthew 25, one of his last teachings, and says, you get to inherit the kingdom of God. And so for a small blimp on the map of humanity, Caleb gets to inherit a kingdom that he's faithful with. And the beautiful part of that is that kingdom leads to something very important in the story of Jesus. Jesus is known as being a part of what we call the Davidic line. And the Davidic line is through the King David. If you know of King David, as I mentioned, David and Goliath, this great king, and Jesus will be born of the root of Jesse, that he'll be through this lineage. If you know anything about David, you know that he was anointed king, and then lots of struggle with Saul, and then eventually becomes king in Hebron. And he's king in Hebron for 7 years. And then he eventually moves to Jerusalem. That's where he spends the rest of his time. But Hebron is where he starts his kingship. Now, if you zoom back even further to Hebron, why does Hebron matter so much? Well, every Israelite at this time would know there's only one piece in all of the promised land that the Israelites owned. And it was a cave. It was a cave in Hebron called the Cave of Machpelah. And that was where Abraham bought to be buried there with Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Leah. And every Israelite knew this was the only place in all there that they owned, technically, and that had a beautiful covenant reminder of the promises of God. There's an ancient Jewish tradition. This is not the Bible. I'm just answering that here. In the Talmud, when they read the scriptures of Caleb's story, it talks about how he was the only one who traveled to Hebron. It changes from all the spies to Caleb, that they went somewhere else, and he went to Hebron. Why would you go to Hebron on your own? The only reason is because you knew what was there was the cave of Machpelah. And so the tradition states that they believe he slipped away from the group and he prayed at this cave that God would continue to keep him faithful and to continue the small piece of the covenant of God for centuries that he may not even fully understand. And for then 45 more years, he keeps this covenant promise. And when the lots are then thrown and everyone's like, I don't know where I want to go, Caleb's like, I know exactly where I'm going to go, and I don't care who stands against it. What does this mean for me? Well, I think it speaks to itself at this point. But I'll give you 4 points that help sum this up. One is that the kingdom is for everyone. I mean, Caleb is not a natural-born Jewish man. He did not go through the normal process. He didn't inherit the things that everyone else deserved. And so if you didn't grow up in a Christian family, you had an unstable upbringing, you're not as smart as you wish you were, Caleb totally gets it. God looked at 12 men and 11 with a birthright and was like, yeah, they don't have it, right? This guy right here is wholeheartedly following me. And, man, you might feel like you don't belong here because of who your family is, or you don't belong here because of how long you've been a Christian or how long you've been coming, or you're not a Christian, or you don't belong because you don't believe maybe the same things. But if we learn one thing in Caleb, it's that your history is not your ceiling. It's your heart and your conviction. It's the wholeheartedness, the undividedness towards God. That doesn't matter how good your legacy is. You don't need a good history to start a good legacy. Number 2, then, is the legacy of that, is that you won't see what your faithfulness produces. There's a phrase in church planting that we say, are you willing to plant a tree that other people will eat fruit from? I grew up in Pennsylvania, and then when I moved to Arizona, I bought a house, and I had this blood orange tree, and I loved it so much, and it was grown 15 years before, and I would eat these oranges off of it, and I thought, man, it would be so cool to have all these different citrus. I mean, I'm in the desert. What else can I grow? And so I constantly tried to grow avocado and different types of citrus, and everything died and burnt to a crisp, except for this blood orange tree. And the reason why the blood orange tree didn't die is because it had been there for years and years and years. And it's so hard to start a new thing. It requires so much vigilance. It's so much difficulty. But I was so excited about the idea of my home having all these different things that could provide fruit in a barren desert. And what lasted when I sold the house was that dang blood orange tree and none of the other things that I constantly replanted, hoping that I would get one avocado and not have to pay $1.50 at the store. Instead, pay $75 to have my own. You must be willing to plant trees that other people will pick fruit on. This is haunting, but somebody in this room is going to be a Caleb for someone who isn't born yet. Somebody is going to take a step today or this week or this year that has generational impact that you have no idea about. He had no clue. All he knew is here's the cave, here's the land. God made this promise. I'm going to wander with these people for 38 years. I'm going to fight 7 years of battles on everyone. And then when my time comes, God's going to give me what I know He promised me. I mean, that's a beautiful, beautiful reminder, and that does not sell in today's world of a quick fix. Number 3 is courage, just taking the next step, not just the next thought. What I love about Caleb is he almost feels irrational. They're like, what are all these things? He's like, doesn't matter. Did God say it or not? Sometimes I need that in my life. I'm so worried about things, and someone just being like, hey, did God say it or not? And you're like, yes, He did. You're like, okay, then what's the problem? We get so excited about our trying to sort our emotions in our mind so that we believe we can make a rational decision. And I promise you that moment will never come. And if it does, you probably missed all the Spirit's promptings before, that you weren't faithful. All these men are like, what about this? What about that? And Caleb's like, I don't care about any of that. So maybe for you, you've been pontificating for so long, hoping you'll feel a certain way or you'll think the right things, and then you can walk forward in full faith. But the truth is you've actually ruined your faith. There's no trust. Caleb has this radical, ridiculous trust. And I don't know what your next step is. It could be one of the PB&Js. It could be a phone call. It could be a confession. It could be following Jesus for the first time, walking in the light. It could be just speaking your anxiety into reality of what it means to give that over to the Lord for you. Stop thinking about the mountain. Hebron is basically a mountain. Ask for it and take your step. Be faithful to what God is doing in front of you. And then the fourth and last one may resonate with some of you who have been in this season is there's endurance in this story that we forget. The wilderness is not the end of Caleb's story. In fact, most of his story is wilderness. We're like, oh, Hebron and battle and great. 38 years of dealing with these people of lack of faith, and somehow he comes up 45 years later without even like a moment. He's like, this is what God promised me. I don't know about you, but I forget what I ate yesterday. Let alone God giving me a promise and me building my life around it in faith. And when all the cultural norms and circumstances and comfortabilities distract me from it, it's so hard to remind yourself of the weight of that promise. And somehow Caleb can do that to when the moment comes, when they're talking about land, Caleb's like, let me remind you guys what God told me 45 years ago that you weren't alive for. The wilderness, though, didn't make Caleb. It reveals his heart, his wholeheartedness towards God and what he had for him. Don't give up on the promise just because you're still in the middle. Even if you're tired, even if you've been faithful and it hasn't produced what you thought it would. Caleb was an unsung hero who had a wholehearted spirit and the courage to ask for a mountain. So his story, if there's one line, he's a wholehearted spirit that refused to let go of what God promised. So that's the invitation for each of us today is what does it look like for us to engage with the spirit of Caleb, that we know that God has brought us this far, has made promises to us that he keeps. And what does it look like for us to walk wholeheartedly in that? So if you close your eyes here, we do this often, we open our hands if you're willing and say a small prayer, come Holy Spirit. Just inviting the Spirit to convict, to guide, to speak truth, to advocate for us. The Spirit is a person. This is how you spend time with a person. And so I got there's four themes. Maybe you resonated most with one of them. I have a question you can ask the Lord in this time, depending on what you resonate with. The first one, if you felt the sense of the kingdom is for everyone and a belonging, the question that you can ask God is there something about who I am or where I came from that I'm still letting disqualify me from what you've promised? Maybe you felt strongly with the legacy point. God, what am I doing right now that is building something for people who come after me? And what am I not doing that I should be? Or maybe you felt the courage point. God, what is the mountain that you've been pointing me toward that I keep walking past? And what is my next actual step, my action toward it? And then lastly, some of you might need to ask the honest question in endurance. God, am I still wholehearted and undivided to you? Or has the wilderness worn something down in me that I need to bring back to you? I'm just going to give you some time to wrestle with God, to be loved by God, to yell at God. And then we have our normal formation time up on the screen, and you can take a moment with those as well, and we'll close in a song. So just give you a minute. I'll repeat the questions one more time. God, is there something about who I am or where I came from that I'm still letting disqualify me from what you've promised? What am I doing right now that is building something for people who come after me? And what am I not doing that I should be? What is the mountain you've been pointing me toward that I keep walking past? And what is my next actual step toward it? Am I still wholehearted, or has the wilderness worn something down in me that I need to bring back to you?
There's no rush if you are still taking some time to reflect, or if you have felt a nudge to go receive prayer. That means you probably should. We are going to sing one more song. Let this time be what you need it to be. You're welcome to join us whenever you're ready. Take me back to the garden. Lead me back to the moment I heard your voice. Take me back to communion. Lead me back to the moment I saw your face. And it was all so simple. It was easy to love. No space between us. It was easy to trust. 'Cause you are closer, closer than my skin. You are in the air I'm breathing in. Here's where the dead things come back to living. I feel my heart beating again. It feels so good to know you are my friend.
And this is the garden. Here in the place I find you close. This is communion. Here in the place I'm fully known. And it was all so simple. You're so easy to love. And no space between us. You're so easy to trust. 'Cause you are closer, closer than my skin. You are in the air I'm breathing in. And here's where the dead things come back to living. I feel my heart beating again. It feels so good to know you are my friend. This is where we're meant to be. Me and you and me. Oh, and I don't have to prove a thing. You've already approved of me. And this is where we're meant to be. Me and you and me. I don't have to prove a thing. You've already approved of me. This is where I'm meant to be. Me and you and me.
Father, Lord, we just thank you that you take us in as outsiders, Lord. We thank you that you've given us the blessing of your kingdom, Lord, as outsiders. I just pray that we seek you and that we seek you wholeheartedly. So I pray as we go out this week that we can seek you and listen. And as we listen, that we sit and we follow with what you say. In your name, amen. All right, you can have a seat. I got 5 announcements, so buckle up. So got your notepads out and ready and everything? Okay, no, I'm just kidding. Everything will also be on the QR code. But number 1, on August 30th at 6:30 p.m. at the King. If you are a current volunteer or you are looking to volunteer, you should today, so sign up outside. That is for you. So go there. We will have just training with every department that there is to serve in. Number 2, on next Sunday is Contrast 101 during the 11:30 service. So if you're new or you've been coming for a minute and you want to learn more, that's for you. That's going to be your one-stop shop for what we're about, what we believe in, kind of the big, broad view of Contrast as a whole. Number 3, next Saturday, we're moving into the King, and we would love your help. So at 9 o'clock at the King, we'll be moving in. So bring your boots, bring your everything to move, carry things. We'd love to have you there. Number 4, elder drop-in. So after this service, the elders will be here. They'd love to answer your questions, anything you have. They'd love to hear and they'd love to talk to you. And lastly, don't forget, grab a PB&J and sign up to volunteer. And that's all I got. So with that, have a good week.
I was born to lift the name above all names. You hear the melody of all creation. But there's a song of praise that only I can bring. Who else is worthy? Who else is worthy? There is no one, only to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. Can we all sing this in one voice? Here is where I lay it down. You are all I'm chasing now. This is my surrender. This is my surrender. Here is where I lay it down. You are all I'm chasing now. This is my surrender. This is my surrender.
Alone in my sorrow and dead in my sin, lost without hope with no place to begin. Your love made a way to let mercy come in. When death was arrested and my life began, ash was redeemed, only beauty remains. And my orphan heart was given a name. My mourning grew quiet, my feet rose to dance. When death was arrested and my life began. Oh, your grace, so free, washes over me. You have made me new, now life begins with you. It's your endless love pouring down on us. You have made us new, now life begins with you. Released from my chains, I'm a prisoner no more. My shame was a ransom he faithfully bore. He canceled my debt and he called me his friend. When death was arrested and my life began. Oh, your grace, so free, washes over me. You have made me new, now life begins with you. It's your endless love pouring down on us. You have made us new, now life begins with you. Our Savior displayed on a criminal's cross. Darkness rejoiced as though heaven had lost. But then Jesus arose with our freedom in hand. That's when death was arrested and my life began. Oh, your grace, so free, washes over me. You have made
storm surrounding me, let it break. At your name, still, call the sea to still, the rage in me to still, every wave. At your name, Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear, Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. Breathe, call these bones to live, call these lungs to sing once again. I will praise Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, 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 Jesus. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Come on, sing it out. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. You silence fear, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus.
Hi, my name is Levi, and welcome to our Sunday gathering. If you've been coming around to Contrast for a while, hi again. If this is your first time or you are newer, we are pumped you are here. We have all been there before, and we know that finding a church home can be hard sometimes. So we do our best to make it as easy, real, and fun as possible. We are definitely not perfect, but hope that you'll get a small, authentic glimpse into our church family today. Our only ask is that you participate in the opportunity to make yourself known in our community. Whether that be with our host after the gathering, filling out a form, or just literally tapping someone on the shoulder and telling them it's your first time and you want friends. Our mission is to help people follow Jesus in his way together. Today is a 70-minute glimpse of that as we worship, celebrate, and learn about God's truths. If you've brought kids with you, they will experience a similar time with our awesome volunteers. While our Sundays are awesome, we have many other opportunities to get involved throughout the week, like joining a missional community or core, serving, or contributing financially to the mission and vision of our church. If you have any questions at all or want to chat, our host will be up in a few moments and they would love to connect with you in whatever way you need. We hope you have a great time as we gather as family today and worship God together.
Good morning, all 12 of you. We're so happy you're here. I feel like if you're further back than like halfway down the room, maybe we should just move up a little closer, just so it doesn't feel quite so empty in the middle, maybe. I don't know. You don't have to. Maybe think about it. Yeah. Oh, wow. Thank you guys so much. It's going to make such a big difference. Well, we are so happy to see you guys here this morning. My name is Elena. I'm on staff, and I get to serve on the worship team here as well. If you didn't know, our worship director, TJ, is getting married today. So, yeah, super exciting. He was not available to lead worship this morning. So I got to step in for him, and I'm going to lead us through our time of Selah as well as some worship through song here this morning. So before we go into worship, we love to take a moment to center ourselves and prepare our hearts for an encounter with the Lord through worship and through teaching. So I'm going to share a passage that my core group read the book of Joel this week. And what was really impactful for me about this book, it's really short. It's only 3 chapters long. And while it is prophecy about the Babylonian exile, so it's talking about when the Israelites are going to be taken captive, which is one of the worst times in their history, it is still so full of hope and so clear, like the Lord's heart for redemption for his people is so clearly on display. So I'm going to share some of these verses. This is from the 2nd chapter, verses 23 through 29. Be glad, O children of Zion, and rejoice in the Lord your God, for he has given the early rain for your vindication. He has poured down for you abundant rain, the early and the latter rain as before. The threshing floors shall be full of grain, the vats shall overflow with wine and oil. I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten, the hopper, the destroyer, and the cutter, the great army which I sent among you. You shall eat in plenty and be satisfied, and praise the name of the Lord your God, who has dealt wondrously with you. And my people shall never again be put to shame. You shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I am the Lord your God, and there is none else. And my people shall never again be put to shame. And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions. Even on the male and female servants in those days I will pour out my spirit. When you're ready, let's sing and worship together. more than silver, more than gold. You are the treasure that I hold. Now that I've tasted of your goodness, nothing else will satisfy. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world. You can have all this world. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world. You can have all this world. Just give me Jesus. I don't want anyone else. I don't need anything else. You are my one thing. You are my one thing. I don't want anyone else. I don't need anything else. You are my one thing. You are my one thing. I don't want anyone else. I don't need anything else. You are my one thing. You are my one thing. I don't want anyone else. I don't need anything else. You are my one thing. 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 Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world. You can have all this world. I don't want anyone else. I don't need anything else. You are my one thing. You are my one thing. I don't want anyone else. I don't need anything else. You are my one thing. 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 Oh, you are my one thing. You are my one thing. You are my one thing. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world. You can have all this world. Just give me Jesus.
Lord Jesus, thank you for gathering us here together today. Thank you for your word and for your promises. Thank you that we can worship you freely, Lord. I pray that we can come together and lay just everything down at your feet today, that we would be receptive to what you have to say to us today, and that we would bring it into us, or into the week with us, Lord, and that we would be attentive during this whole time, and that you would guide our hearts to you, Lord. We love you. Amen.
All right, you can go ahead and have a seat. Good morning. I'm Brock. If we haven't met, I'd love to meet you. After the service, I'll be in the lobby. I'm your host today, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. If you're new or you've been coming for a while, on the back of all these chairs is the little QR code. Give that a scan. That's where everything about Contrast is at. You'll hear that mentioned multiple times today. That is your key for today. With that, we are a storytelling church, and one thing we're going to talk about today is core groups. So I'm going to welcome Hannah up with a couple people to talk about core.
Hi guys, 2 mics, a lot of power. We are going to talk about core groups this morning, like Brock said. But part of my job here is I get to help create and maintain and run a lot of our communities here at Contrast. And one of our main forms of community is our core groups. And so these are small groups of usually single gender, about 4 to 5 people, and they meet weekly and go through CORE is an acronym. It stands for Confession, Outreach, Reading, and Encouragement. And we are about to start a new core semester in September, and so we wanted to give you guys a little deep dive into what it's like to actually be in a core by interviewing some core members. Full disclosure, Trent is my counterpart. He's also a communities team lead, so he is a professional up here. I replaced a person who was on a previous panel and had to leave. I was like 5 minutes ago, I was like, hey Trent, you wanna talk about core? And he was like, of course, I love it. So, and then these other friends up here have just been members of core and are excited to tell you about their experience. So I am gonna ask you guys to first share your name. You can say what core group you're in, and then what do you love about core?
I'm Lex. I'm a regular core plebeian. I am in Esther Webb's core. And what I love about core is just the really deep friendships that were created in such a short period of time, and just the vulnerability and trust that comes into them. And just in different seasons of life where you may be feeling further from the Lord, that you just have this group that holds you accountable and keeps pulling you back in.
Hey everyone, my name is Trent. Like Hannah said, I help organize our cores, so I am very biased. I meet with a group of guys on Thursday mornings or Friday mornings. I would say my favorite part about core is it's really a place where you can't help but grow, and I think that's due to 2 things. I think it's the size of the group. Because it's only 3 to 5 people, there's not really a way to show up and not share and not talk about what's going on in your life and your relationship with Jesus. And then also the format of the group, like what Hannah was saying, the fact that every week you come and you confess and you talk about how God is asking you to grow, I think just really creates an environment where people mature a lot and they learn more about themselves and the relationship with Jesus. So that's what I love about core.
Hey guys, I'm Nathan. I'm also a regular core plebeian. I'm in Trey's core, so I have not been paid to say what I'm about to say. But one thing that I love about core is how they really push you to grow closer to God. Like over the course of the year, you really get to grow close to the guys or gals in your core group. You get to love them, confess your sins to them, be prayed over. And then in that process, they start to kind of identify blind spots in your life, areas where you can grow closer to God, and really push you to grow in those areas. And that's been really transformative for my walk with God. And yeah, I'm just super grateful for how they've pushed me to grow closer to God. So that's my favorite part.
That's great, guys. Thank you. Okay, so last question. So some of you might know this, some of you might not. Core is a little bit of a commitment. We expect you to, they meet weekly. You show up every week. There's some Bible reading that's involved in it, transparency, honesty. And so if someone was on the fence about joining a core, what would you tell them to help them get over that hurdle and just like go for it?
Yeah, I have actually been reading a book. It's called You Can Just Do Things. And one of the main tenets of this book is that humans tend to overrate the risk of taking action in life. And a lot of times that can play out in like moving or changing jobs, but it can also play out in smaller decisions like joining a core group. Like you might consider the risks I'm meeting 4 new people. I have to confess my sins to them. I, have to rearrange my schedule, things like that. Like, those are real risks. But humans are very risk averse, and we tend to overrate those risks compared to the benefits of joining a core group. Like, you might grow closer to God this year than you ever have before. You might come out of core with 4 of your new best friends. You might serve the poor in a way that you never have before, and you might read the Bible more than you ever have in your life. And so I would challenge you to consider if the benefits overrate the risks, because for my life, they really have, and I think the benefits are really profound to joining a core.
I've got 2. First one, I've never met somebody who regretted joining a core.
That's so true. That's a really
Yeah,
good
have you,
point.
Hannah?
No one has
I don't
ever
think
been
so.
like, take me out of this core.
Yeah, exactly. And then the second one is just that your leader will really care about you. We have awesome core leaders at Contrast, so if that's a concern of yours, don't let that be a concern. Our core leaders are awesome. They'll answer all the questions that you have. Hannah and I are here to answer any questions that you might have, so just join a core.
You guys switched it up on me. I intentionally placed myself here because last time John Amon had such a good answer, I forgot what question I was answering.
And she was at the end.
What I would say about if you're hesitant to join a core is that I first was scared to join a core because I just felt like I was immature in my walk in the Christian faith, and I was scared of just being surrounded by a group that holds you so accountable and you have to be vulnerable with. I had grown up Catholic, and then I had really strayed away from the Lord for many years. And what I would say is I was so pleasantly surprised by how God places these people in your life and helps to make you feel safe and hold you accountable, but also free you from some of that guilt. And then just the friendships and the empowerment that comes from that just bring you closer to the Lord. And so he's really working through these people. So I would say that is what I was most surprised by and what has been most impactful to me.
That's so great. Thanks, guys. So practically, if you're like, oh, all right, you convinced me, let's join a core. Or maybe you're like, yes, I love this. You're so excited. You can scan the QR code and fill out the core interest form. And then we are making groups in the next couple of weeks. And then groups start after Labor Day. So you can practically do that. And then just so you're aware of kind of how the format runs, most of our groups are single gender, but we do offer a few co-ed options. If that feels like a better fit for your family, you can put all of that on the form, and then we'll reach out to you with some options. We have morning groups, we have evening groups. Basically, any objection that you have, we can solve it and make it work for you. So if you have any questions, like Trent said, find Trent, find me, Trey, Joe Wallach, anyone who's on our communities team would love to answer any questions and help get you connected. So let's give it up for our friends for sharing.
Bobby decided to go to church this morning, but instead of volunteers, Bobby found voluntary tears. Tears in the parking lot. Inside the building. At the coffee cart. At the kids' ministry. Bobby was lonely. He needed volunteers. But then he woke up from a horrible nightmare and found, well, Bobby found joy. People with purpose. Unity of heart. Humility. Care. Compassion. Because Sundays are better with volunteers.
Wow. If that doesn't want to make you just sign up and serve and run through a wall, I don't know what will, you know? Rumor has that they're like, that's AI. And I'm like, no, that was our wonderful Jess Kutzer. She made that video in like 2 minutes. So if you see her at the coffee cart, be like, you rock, and I want to sign up to serve on a team. We are, if you didn't know, in the next several weeks, moving to 2 locations. So we're really excited about that, but lots of logistics, lots of changes, lots of fun, crazy stuff. And as you can see, cores, are starting to wrap in the fall, and serving is also really, really important. We have like over 100 people we need each week to make services happen. And so we're like, as a staff, we have all these things ahead of us. Like each week we got to like cast vision on different things. And, all the leadership gurus are like, just cast vision on one thing, and I'm like, I think our people's brains are bigger than that. I think they can handle two things. And so core groups and service teams are like, that's our goal today, is that people who've been a part of this community would jump into both of those. And so the way to remember that, just in case you can't remember two things at once, we started to riff on a bunch of different duos that are really good together. And so maybe you can relate, like, nothing better than a Frosty with French fries, right? I mean, come on, that's like, why even just get a Frosty on its own anymore, Or maybe Sam and Frodo. Come on, I mean, what's a better duo than them? A really niche one, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. Anybody at SpongeBob? If you're like, nope, didn't know that one. What about Watermelon and Salt? Okay, some of you are like, yeah. I grew up butter noodles and ketchup. Believe it or not, that was my diet for about 4 years straight. Lastly, vanilla ice cream and pickles. Anyone? Nope. Okay. No one today has been excited about that one. I found that one online. But today we thought we would give you PB&J. What's better than a PB&J? And if you notice, there's a QR code on there. So Welch's does not know that we did this, so do not tell them, because they love suing people. But this is a reminder that both of them are better together to serve and to be part of our community and serving, and being part of core group is a great thing. So on the way out, you're going to be handed one of these if you want. And the goal is that you scan the QR and you fill out both forms before it thaws out, because these are not very good right out of the freezer. But this one has been thawing out. Does anybody want this one? Does anybody? Yes, Kevin. Oh, not even close. Last time it was the front row, so it was way easier. But all right. Is that memorable? You guys are going to remember that when we leave. That was the goal. Okay, let's have a smooth transition into our series. How's that sound? So we are in a series called Unsung Heroes, and this whole summer we've been taking obscure characters in the Bible and just like bringing light to their stories. And a lot of the stories have had really cool moments of Jesus where you kind of see it in the threads, and that's the beauty of the whole Bible, is it's all leading and culminating up to Jesus and what that means for us. And so today I'm talking about a character in the Bible who I really love, and I would almost like nickname him a headstone character. He's the kind of guy who, like, he has some things said about him that I would want on my headstone, like when I die. If you've ever thought about that, maybe you're like, no, I don't think about death that much, or maybe you're like, no, I do more than I should. You get a headstone when you die, generally, and you get like a word, 2 words, maybe if you've got some money, maybe like a whole sentence. Maybe you just write out song lyrics. I don't know what you put on your headstone, but normally it's like, okay, how can you sum up this person's life in one sentence, which is incredibly hard. And the sentence that's said most about this character 7 times in the small amount of text that he's in, it says he followed the Lord wholeheartedly. I'm like, I think that's it. I don't think you can do better on your headstone, because everything else falls under that, right? Like, you can assume a lot of things by hearing that phrase, right? Someone who walked deeply in faith with the Lord. Another way to say it in the Hebrew when it says it is that he was undivided, that his heart it didn't have other divisions or things that detracted him from the main goal. This person, his name in Hebrew is Kalev. It means dog, which it's not like, you dog, like that's a newer phrasing of the word dog. It's more like, think golden retriever, like super loyal, obedient. His name is Caleb. So if you didn't know, Caleb in Hebrew means dog. And so we're going to jump in. So if you have your Bibles, we're going to go to Numbers 13. If you started your Bible reading plan in a year, this is probably where you gave up, is in Numbers. You're like, yeah, I got my Bible open there from March when I was like, I can't do it. Numbers, it's brutal. But Numbers has some cool stories in it, and so we're going to be in Numbers 13. And if you're new to the Bible or you haven't read the 2 books before, Genesis and Exodus, here's kind of the quick synopsis until you get to Numbers 13. You have the Garden of Eden, and then you have the sin entering the world, and you have these like lineages of people and stories, and you have Abraham. God makes his promise to Abraham. He says, I'm going to give you so many people you can't even count, a nation, generations that will follow me, and then I'm going to give you a specific land that we often call the Promised Land, right? It's like this land, and the phrasing is full of milk and honey, which, nowadays, if you modernize that, it's probably like full of oil and avocados is probably the equivalent now. You're like, lots of prosperity in this land, right? And so the Promised Land was not, they didn't own it though. They had to go get it. And so the journey in Numbers 13 is they come from Egypt where they were enslaved, and they cross. These are all the cool stories you hear about in the Old Testament, like crossing the Red Sea and following a pillar of fire at night and a cloud by day to like where they should go, and then bread or manna being rained every day so they can eat, like these cool, wild stories. Then they get to the Mount Sinai, and Moses goes up on the top of the mountain, and God gives the commandments, makes the whole mountain shake, and they're like, oh my gosh, we should follow this guy, right? And so that's the journey for a couple years. It gets to the point where they are on the edge of the promised land. They're in a little oasis in the wilderness called Kadesh, and they are at the finish line, and they are about to go into the promised land. And like anybody in human history, when God says a promise, we're not sure if he really means it. So they're like, why don't we go and spy out on this land? And let's see if it actually is what he says it is and who's in it, and like we can defeat him. And so their lack of trust, they obviously do the anxious thing. They let their anxiety rule, and they tell Moses, can we do this? Moses is like, all right, whatever. He talks to God. God's like, fine. And so this leads us to the start of our hero, Caleb, his story. In Numbers 13, and I'm going to be going pretty quick through Numbers, but you can try and keep along or take notes. But it says this in verse 1. It says, the Lord then spoke to Moses, and he said, send out men to investigate the land of Canaan. And most of the promised land is the land of Canaan, which I am going to give to the Israelites. And you are to send out one man from each ancestral tribe, each one a leader among them. And so Moses sent them out from the wilderness of Paran at the command of the Lord, and all of them were leaders of the Israelites. So here God has this idea. He says, okay, here's what you're going to do. There's 12 tribes that make up Israel. And at this point, they've been counted. There's been a census. So we know there's almost 1 million Israelites. There's a lot of people. And so at this point, there's 12 tribes, and they kind of have, their own sort of family ties, right? And so he says, pick the best leader of each group. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean oldest, because they did have to, spies are kind of like seals, right? You got to be well in shape. And so they picked the 12 best men, and then it goes through them if you're looking in your Bible in verse 4 through 20. I'm going to kind of paraphrase, but they get a leader from each tribe, and there's two unique leaders in these names. One is Hoshea, son of Nun, who gets his name changed to Joshua. So that's the Joshua we'll talk about later in the Bible. His name changes from salvation to God's salvation. So if you didn't know, Jesus is a Greek term that means God saves, from the Hebrew Yeshua, which means God saves. So when God says, I'm bringing Jesus to save you, he's literally saying, I'm saving you by bringing you, I'm saving you. It's a pretty cool pun that God does for Jesus. But Joshua is the original Jesus in the Old Testament. He saves the people and then brings them into the promised land. So you've got Joshua, you've got then Caleb, who's our guy today, Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and then 10 other tribesmen all going out to spy. So you got 12 guys, okay? So that's the story. And then Moses tells them, go through the lands, basically see if people are weak or strong, cities are fortified or not, if the land is actually full of milk and honey, if it's rich or poor. And he says, and bring back some fruit, because we want to know, right, if this is real. So I know you're like, what kind of land? What are we talking about? So I got a map. I know how much you love maps here at this church, right? So this is the map of the area. And if just to zoom kind of in, Kadesh is where they're at right now in the oasis. They started over here in Egypt, crossed the Red Sea, and then wandered around here for a few years. And then everything north of here is essentially the promised land. This is about a third of it. It goes way up more north. But they take this path, and if you notice right in the center to the left of the Dead Sea is this city called Hebron, which they talk a lot about. Hebron is the tallest mountain in the area. It's a really fortified city, a beautiful city. And so they go to do their spying, and they come back 40 days later, and they report that there's these people, they're called the Anakites, and they're called long-necked people. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking like truly long necks, like they had a problem. But long neck just basically means tall, scary warriors. So the first king, Saul, was long-necked. He was a tall, handsome man. And I like to think of it like if you've seen the original Space Jam, okay? There's the little monsters, and there's one of them, his name is Nerdluck Blanco. He looks like this. You know this guy? Little bow tie. And then he steals the powers of the NBA player, and then all of a sudden he looks like this. He's like tall, and he's got a really long neck. And I made this meme because memes are back in. Did you know that? They're not. I'm making them back in. But and they're like scared. They're like, these guys are really tall, really. But I guess the positive is that this city is really healthy. It has tons of food. They bring back grapes. They're like, it's exactly as God said it is. It's a land of blessing, full of milk and honey. It can have prosperity, but it's fortified. Their people are tall. We're scared. So that's their report. It says in verse 26, they came back and they told the whole community of the Israelites, this. They told Moses, "We went to the land where you sent us. It is indeed flowing with milk and honey, and this is its fruit," which is basically like them being like, yeah, I guess God was right on his promises. And then it says, "But the inhabitants are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak," that's the long-necked people, "there. The Amalekites live there, the Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites." Am I right? Right? And the Canaanites, they all live in this region. And so they're like, yes, God is true in what he said, but like this is unstoppable. We can't do anything about these troops. Like they're too strong, they're too difficult, right? And so they're just immediately like hedging their bets, like, it's pretty tough though. Then we get Caleb. He comes in out of nowhere in verse 30, and it says he silenced the Hebrew word hasa, or hush, or shut up. He's like, y'all just be quiet. And he before the people, and he says, "Let us go up and occupy it, for we are well able to conquer it." But all the men who had gone up with him said, "We are not able to go up against these people because they are stronger than we are." And then they presented Israelites with a discouraging report, or your translation might say evil or deceptive. Basically, they took the report and they kind of started to embellish and add things that are not true, or accusing things so that they would be afraid. And so they start saying, "The land that we passed through to investigate, it devours its inhabitants." Like they're cannibals and they eat people. And then we even saw, it says, Nephilim or Nephilim, depending on how you say it, which are basically giants. The Nephilim were in the original part of Genesis in the Bible. Before the flood, they were like giants. And so they're descendants of these. And we even saw some of the giants. And it says, "We seem like grasshoppers, both to ourselves and to them." So they're obviously doing a bad thing. They're lying, which is not good at all. And they're not only lying, but they're distrusting the promises of God, right? Like they are seeing the circumstances in front of them, and they're like, we cannot do this because of X, Y, and Z, right? Which is exactly, I don't even need to connect the dots. I'm sure you can relate. There are many times in your life where you feel like God's calling you something, and you're like, nah, I can't do it. Or too hard, or it's not the way I'm thinking it'll be, or I need to think about it more, I need to process it more. And so they're at the precipice of entering into this through God's provision, and they decide, nah, we're not going to do it, because they start believing the lies, right? And what's unique about this is, the whole story of the Israelites is basically them doing something bad and then God being like, oh my gosh, I want to kill these people. And then Moses is like, don't kill them, just kill some of them. It's like kind of the bargaining. And God's like, I can't take these people. And Moses talks with him. And so God decides, okay, what I'm going to do is, they were out there for 40 days. For every day is 1 year that they're going to be back in the desert, in the wilderness. And so 40 years, which is a generation, basically this generation of unbelief is not going to get the promised land, because quite honestly, they don't trust me and they don't even really want it. They think this is bigger than me, so like they can have whatever. So he says this 40 years, we're going to be back in the desert. Now the 2 years is long, 40 years is really long. And when he says that, he says, turn around and journey into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea, which is literally the sea they crossed from Egypt, right? And how many times did they be like, God, like, can we just go back to Egypt? Surely it'd be better there than being in this desert with this raining bread and this pillar of fire, right? Like, this is our hardest of heart. And what's crazy is they're saying that, right? And they know the journey they've been on, and they think that's better to go back to what they had, right? And in the midst of this, we see that they're thinking about killing Moses. They're thinking about stoning him and Caleb and Joshua, because they're like, we don't want to deal with this plan. But after they start to realize God's mad at them and Moses tells them, they mourn their sin, which is really interesting. They're devastated by their lack of trust. And what they do, though, which is really interesting, is the next day they wake up and they decide for themselves that God has forgiven them. And so they wake up the next day and they're like, we're going to go take the promised land. And Moses is like, no, you're not. Like, I'm not going. The ark isn't going. So good luck, right? Basically, the presence of God is not with you. And, we read that story and we're like, that's really interesting. Like, why did they all of a sudden just think that? Well, if you were told, hey, you're going to be in the desert and you're going to die there for 40 years, you might be like, you know what? Maybe God did forgive us and we should take a risk here and fight these troops, right? And so they try to fight and they immediately ran off and they are back into the wilderness for 40 years. All the spies that had lied got the plague and died. So that was interesting because they lied. And the Israelites are once again moving through the wilderness. Now, the story is interesting because as we first read it, only Caleb is the one who spoke up. We do know, and we'll fill in the details later, that Joshua also agreed with Caleb in that we should do this. And so Caleb and Joshua are really the two of this that believe that God can do this. But the difficulty is that as he says you're all going to die in the wilderness, God makes a promise that Caleb and Joshua will be the only ones that will get to live through the wilderness for generations. And he says this in Numbers 26. This is 38 years later in the desert. They took another census to make sure everyone in the previous generation had died. And it says, there was not a man among them who had been among them numbered by Moses and Aaron the priest when they numbered the Israelites in the desert of Sinai. For the Lord had said to them, they will surely die in the wilderness. And there was not a single man left of them except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, son of Nun. Now, I just remember here, okay, that they did the right thing. And the consequences of the entire nation, they have to still live in. Like, that's the worst part. Imagine doing what's right before God and then God punishing the nation and you having to withstand that punishment. I mean, imagine I would have some bitterness. Every day I wake up, I'm like, we wouldn't be here if I could have just, we all could have just listened to God. We wouldn't be in this situation, right? But you don't see this, bitterness. You don't see much happen in this story except for little stories of Moses and some other people. And Moses loses his cool. Moses in the 38 years eventually strikes a rock in anger, and God's like, you've done it. You're not going to be in the promised land either, right? So it goes from 3, and then Aaron dies eventually, and then it's just these 2 that are going to get to see the promises of God and be a part of the promised land journey. And so even Moses, in the 38 years of difficulty, snaps. So like Caleb is not only impressed for being faithful in that moment, but then having to like withstand the punishment of his people for 38 years is remarkable. I think this is true in our church. In church world, you think about like you have healthy people, and you're like, man, I want that. And so these healthy people, everyone flocks to them and like wants a piece, of the health, right? And be around healthy friendships. And then they become healthy, which is very true. But the opposite is also true. That unhealthy people don't just affect themselves, it affects everything and everyone around them. And so it's remarkable that Caleb and Joshua were able to withstand in the moments of these years of walking to be continually faithful to the Lord. So God takes a census, everyone's gone, everyone had died out, it's all new generation. And they're like, we're ready to go in the promised land, back to Kadesh, okay, 38 years later. And then we get another reminder as they start to decide basically their military plans, because this whole land was full of Canaanites and these tribes that God had wanted to do divine punishment. They were terrible nations. And so they're planning out essentially where they're going to start battling and the areas they're going to take over. And God mentions again this story because he has to remind this new generation. And he says this in verse 32, or chapter 32, verse 12, and you wouldn't probably even notice any different, but it says the same thing. Everyone gets punishment except for Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, and Joshua, son of Nun, for they followed the Lord wholeheartedly. Now, you probably didn't even catch it, but it added a word to Caleb. He wasn't just the son of Jephunneh, he was the Kenizzite. 2 Z's. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I already know a lot about the Kenizzites. That's what you were thinking. Because you were like, I heard we were doing Caleb, and so I stayed up till 1 a.m. last night studying the Kenizzites. And you were fascinated by it. In fact, you wanted to come share it with me this morning, and you're so excited that I'm going to read this list of the Kenizzites. And you know that the Kenizzites came first in Genesis 15, where God gives the promised land to Abraham, and he tells him the bounds of the promised land. And one of the places is where the Kenizzites dwell, meaning the Kenizzites were on the opposite plan. Like God's blessing for the Israelites was a curse for the Kenizzites. And so the land that God promises his people was actually the land that was going to be dispossessed by his people. We also know, and you probably read at 1 a.m., that the Kenizzites were also descendants of Esau. If you remember the story of Jacob and Esau, Esau was firstborn, but he sold his birthright, his blessing from God, for a bowl of porridge. Okay, that's another story for another day. But then Esau's generation sort of falls outside of blessing, and then Jacob's nation, the generations of Jacob is blessed. And so after that, then we see, wow, it's 2 strikes. Like this is not somebody who should be a part of God's blessing or God's favor for what he's doing for the Israelites. Somehow, though, he is a part of the tribe of Judah. How is Caleb a part of the tribe of Judah? Well, most likely scholars argue there are a couple different ways you could happen, but most likely his mom married into Judah. So whenever they left Egypt, it was a massive historical event, and a lot of other tribes and stuff like hooked their cart up to Israel because they were impressed by God, or they just were like, when larger force, safer around this type of society with battles and things. And so a lot of people cleave themselves into the family of Israel, following the laws, but they weren't truly Jewish. And so Caleb is one of those, regardless. He's not a natural-born Israelite, okay? But then the last thing that you probably realized as you were reading late at night, you made this conclusion. You're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy that he was not only not a true Jewish by blood, but he was the best of the tribe of Judah, which is the best tribe. So Caleb is essentially grafted into this family of faithfulness where all these people have just been born into it. And not only that, but when they picked the 12 spies of the 12 tribes, he was the best of that entire tribe. Now you're like, I kind of respect this Caleb guy, right? It's kind of cool. It's amazing what you learn at 1 a.m., right? So then, God, why does God do that? Why is there this little detail? Well, what's happening is they're talking about the areas they're going to start fighting, and then they name claim to those areas for themselves. Right? That's the whole point of the Promised Land, is they get space and territory and kingdom for generations of their descendants. That is blessing in the Old Testament. Land. Like, land is the eternity of blessing for your family. Now, land is still important to us, but, most of the world is pretty well, everyone's staked their borders. Now, there's still some argues about that, and Antarctica is kind of up there. Who knows who owns Antarctica, right? But the land is it's different than it was then. And so they're fighting over land. So God is like, hey, this is a Kenizzite. Caleb, remember the guy who you heard about who had faith and no one else did? He is going to get land. God's basically like, yeah, I love the outsider. He's basically doubling down on the fact that Caleb wasn't a born by blood Jewish man. So fast forward through some stories, we get to in Joshua, the book of Joshua, all these different battles, and they're starting to take over the promised lands. And you got the cool stories like the Battle of Jericho, if you know that one where they march around the walls and the walls fall down. Rahab and the spies. We got the one where the sun stops in the middle of battle, which if you're a science person, you know that's just, we don't know how that happened because gravity would just fling everybody at 1,000,000 miles an hour if the sun stopped because of magnets and stuff. I don't know, I'm not a science guru. But you're like, these crazy stories, right? You're like, wow. Here's what's remarkable, though. 38 years in the desert and then 7 years of battle, big battles to clear out the promised land. Nothing changed in those 38 years in terms of the difficulty of taking those places. Still the same long-necked people in the same place, if not maybe more fortified. Nothing changed except the people's ability to be faithful to what God had called them to. And God just waited until they were ready. And so they start taking over this whole area, and they start winning all these battles. And it says this in Joshua 11. It says, at that time Joshua went and destroyed the Anakites. These are the long-necked people from the hill country, from Hebron, which is this city on a hill that was super fortified, beautiful grapes, but very difficult people to kill and fight. And they destroyed them. So Joshua totally destroyed them in their towns, said no Anakites were left in Israelite territory. And so what happens is they go through all these places, and they win these large battles. All these cities would gather men, and they'd fight these large battles. But then as you started to then take over pieces of land, there was smaller battles and things you had to fight in each city and things like that. And so 7 years of large battles, Caleb is fighting for the people of Israel for all these different places. And they win all these large battles, and then they realize, hey, most of the larger battles are done. We're going to take over this area. Now we need to send men into the areas that they're going to then win small battles on and then also own the land, right, for the long term. That was the goal. And so they decide, why don't we cast lots to figure out who has to go where? Because there's certain land that's better than others, but then there's also certain land that requires, it's way harder to take it. Maybe it's more fortified, or the men are stronger, or whatever. And Hebron was one of those places where it was an incredibly hard city to take over, but it was a beautiful place. But nobody wanted to go there. And so why don't we cast lots, and that way we just get what you get. And they're thinking, this will be a good idea. However, you forgot that Caleb is on the scene here, and Caleb has a great memory. And so in Joshua 14, it says, the men of Judah approached Joshua and Gilgal. They're going to do this. And then it says, Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to him, you know what the Lord said about you and me to Moses, the man of God, at Kadesh. I was 40 years old when Moses, the Lord's servant, sent me from Kadesh to spy on the land, and I brought back to him an honest report. My countrymen who accompanied me frightened the people, but I remained loyal to the Lord my God. That day Moses made this solemn promise, surely the land on which you walked will belong to you and your descendants permanently, for you remain loyal to the Lord your God. So now look, the Lord has preserved my life just as he promised these past 45 years since the Lord spoke these words to Moses while Israel traveled through the wilderness. And he says, see here, I am today 85 years old, and today I am as strong as when Moses sent me out. I don't know. I can fight and go about my daily activities with the same energy I had then. Now assign me this hill country that the Lord promised me at that time. No doubt you had heard that then the Anakites live there in large fortified cities, but assuming the Lord is with me, I will conquer them as the Lord has promised. And so Joshua asked God to empower Caleb and assigned him Hebron. And so Hebron remains the assigned land of Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, to this very day, because he remained loyal to the Lord, the God of Israel. Now, the story, you're like, that's crazy. There's so many. Let's just pause here. There's an 85-year-old man who's like, I am as strong as I've ever been. Which you're like, I don't know. I don't know if anyone here is 85, but I don't know if even right now I'm as strong as I was even a year ago. And he's like, I got it, no problem, right? And you're like, what did this guy do? If it was a movie, they'd cue to a montage of him in the desert, bench pressing every day with some rock music, right? Getting ready for this day. And he's like, nothing's changed, guys. You were all not alive then, but I was. And I don't know if you remember the words that were said. And this is what God said, and this is the promise. And I'm ready to go. Now, the weird historical fact on this is kind of weird. Might have tripped you up, is the fact that he says he's going to take land that we had just read had already been taken. And so there's kind of two views on what went on here. Either this passage is essentially later, but it's in the narrative of what the movement of the conquest was, or the more likely option, which is very possible, is that when they would take these large battles and move through cities, they would go very quickly, and they would go on to the next. And so the Anakites basically came back and reestablished in this city, because it was 2 years later when they were going to come back to the city. There's also the historical, if you read more in the text, there's a guy named Arba, who's the leader of these Anakites, and he's called a giant of giants. So basically Hebron, not only one of the hardest cities to take, also has this giant of giants. It's essentially a Goliath. If you know of David and Goliath, David slings and kills this giant, a really tall guy. Arba is the OG Goliath, and Caleb is the OG David. He is the original, I have the faith, the Lord has made this promise. And I love his phrase, assuming the Lord is with me, right? Imagine our life if we just lived like that. We're yeah, we're going to walk out in faithfulness. I'm just going to assume the Lord's with me. That's a fair assumption if you're walking in the promises that he's made. And so he steps into this, and he says, I don't care how scary the land is. I don't care how old I am. I remember the promise. Nothing has changed. And I'm going to walk in faithfulness, and ends up taking Hebron, this city. Now, if we just stop here, we're what a beautiful story of just a resilient, faithful, fidelity of faith man, right? Just wholeheartedly. Truly, that's what Caleb is. And he's an outsider, which makes the story even cooler. It's this underdog type thing, right? He just trusts in the promises and the blessings of God, and that's a great story. But what I love about our series is the goal of our series is not just to feature beautiful stories of God's characters in the Bible, but the hope is that you can find the thread of Jesus in each story, that there is a messianic promise. There's a Jesus promise about what this means for us as we follow Jesus. And the piece of Caleb that's really beautiful is this idea, as I talked about, land, inheriting a land. It's really kind of unique for us to think about, but kingdom was the physical bounds of the place that you live, but it was also the cultural reality that you live in. So you could say, I live in America, but when you say that, you could mean geographically, but you also could mean culturally. Yeah, I'm from America, which means I talk a certain way, I wear certain clothes, or I complain about certain things, right? And so in this instance, when they're fighting over essentially the land and where God is going to take them, that is their generational blessing, an eternal sort of descendant inheritance. And so the place that you would get has immense value. And so God, when it would say God blesses you in the Old Testament, what it meant was his presence is with you. And it's not really different today. If you're blessed, we would probably say, well, that probably means God's with you. But we would ask, okay, how are you blessed? We typically point to oftentimes material things is a shallow way of looking at it. How are you blessed? Well, wow, they're really blessed. Yeah, they got a super nice car or a big house or no health issues or whatever. And those can be blessings. But what's more important than material blessings is the spiritual blessing, the reality that God is with us. That's the end of the day. We are created to be in the presence, in the community of God. That's everything else, just a topping on top, right? And so the blessing in this culture was the land that you're given, then God is in it, his presence is in it, and then for generations to come, people benefit from that. That's the milk and honey. The milk and honey is not just a physical thing, though it is an inhabitable land. But the point is that it's a land for generations to come, that people can glean off the health and the presence of God. And that's why the tabernacle was so important. They didn't have a temple yet, so they had to have God's presence everywhere they went. And they created a kingdom and a space for him to be a part of it. And so Caleb is given a kingdom. You're like, okay, Trey, where are you going with this? Jesus, some of his first words is, repent, the kingdom is near. Now, if anybody heard that, they'd be like, well, yeah, Rome's here. The religious leaders are here. Like, we got kingdoms. And Jesus is like, no, this is a very different kingdom, right? This isn't a kingdom of force. It's not a kingdom of boundary. It's a kingdom of God's sovereignty and his power and his goodness that is being unleashed on the earth. And you have the opportunity to be in it. And they're like, great, how much money do I need? He's like, none. Great, what boundary is it? It surpasses all physical boundaries. And then he gives his most famous sermon. He says, blessed are these, for they inherit the kingdom. And they're like, that doesn't sound right. You're telling me my prerequisite is I'm poor in spirit? And Jesus is like, yes, right? And so Caleb is inheriting a kingdom that he believed, Hebron specifically, but that land was what he needed to accomplish to be faithful before the Lord and have generational blessing. And we see that, read that God has given him permanently generational blessing. Jesus uses the same word in Matthew 25 for inheriting a kingdom, which he says far greater than the physical world. He uses the same word that would be the Hebrew for when Caleb inherited a kingdom. And so what we're seeing is Caleb is inheriting a physical kingdom, but the reality is spiritual. The devotion towards God alone allows him for blessing and God's presence. And Jesus enters this scene and allows us to have the full presence of God and to be in his kingdom regardless of what we do. That's a beautiful story when you realize that that's what Caleb is truly the threads of his faithfulness. And you might also be like, okay, that's cool too. But there's an even deeper reality with Caleb, and it's this weird obsession he has with this land called Hebron, which I've mentioned. Hebron is this city that's on a hill. Like I said, it's fortified. It's a great city. What is so important about Hebron? Well, if you stayed up past 1 a.m. to study the Kenizzites, and you started to read about Hebron, you would learn that there was one place that the Israelites owned in all of the Promised Land before for hundreds of years, and it was this small cave in the Promised Lands. It's called the Cave of Machpelah. And it's basically where Abraham bought hundreds and hundreds of years before to bury his loved ones. So Abraham's buried there, Sarah's buried there, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, Leah, all these people. Guess where that cave is? Hebron. And every Jew would know that because that was the goal, is they are descendants of Abraham, and the blessing of God is going to eventually come to fruition. And Hebron, in this cave, has this deep spiritual reminder of the flagpole that God has established in this area that will eventually become theirs, right? It's leaning forward and trusting in the future. This was so important that when you read this story, it says that all the spies went out to all these different cities, but when they went to Hebron, it says only Caleb. It says he went to Hebron alone, basically. And for years, this was baffling, and the ancient Jewish tradition was so, they just could not figure out this. This is what they believed. They believed that Caleb slipped away from the group to visit the cave of Machpelah and to pray and to be with God and to remind himself of a covenant that he did not even blood right belong to. This is the type of faithfulness that we see in a man who then 45 years later, 7 years of battle, 38 years in the desert with these terrible people, can walk in and be like, I'm here for my promise. And I don't care how strong the guy is. I don't care if I'm 85. Like, if God's, I'm going to assume he's with me. He's been with me this long. And so Hebron isn't just land, though. Hebron is this beautiful city where we see the start of the Davidic line. I know, you're like, just hang with me here. The Davidic line, which is King David, and from King David comes the Messiah, comes Jesus Christ. This is from the root of Jesse, which is of David's line. And so David becomes king in what city? Hebron. And he lives in Hebron for 7 years before he moves to Jerusalem, and that's where they build the temple with Solomon and all that story. But Caleb's faithfulness in this little town with this cave is merging the story of God through the cave and through ancestors and through the promise of Abraham into then the start of the promise of David, which leads into the story of Jesus. And what I love about this is Caleb had no clue what the future would hold for that. He just knew that God had called him to that place, and that he was willing to give his life for the promise of which God said he would have it. And I just wonder for us, as there's many places in our life where we're just taking that next step, not knowing the outcome long term, not being given this clear path, but just one step being wholehearted and trusting in the goodness of God. Now, the last question we always like to answer in these is there's this obscure Old Testament character, you bring in these lenses of Christ, and then you ask, okay, what does this actually mean for me, right? Because you could, like I said, you could walk out here and be like, that was a really cool story. I had no idea Caleb did all that stuff. And he was obsessed with Hebron, right? And then he was somehow still in really good shape at 85 years old. That's impressive. Here's the 4 threads we see. I'm going to just wrap up with this. And I think you'll identify with one or some of these. Number 1 is it means for you, this is a reminder that the kingdom is for everyone. It's just belonging. Caleb is not a part of this, he's not a Jewish man, really. I mean, he was born into it, maybe, or grafted into it. And he did not have the same experience a lot of you. Some of you use your lack of family upbringing as a reason to sort of distance you from walking in the way of Jesus. Well, I wasn't raised in a good household, or I didn't grow up in church, or maybe I don't know enough, I'm not smart enough, I don't know the right lingo, therefore, I just don't know if this is for me. And Caleb is a reminder that it is for you. In fact, Caleb had something all those other people didn't. He had this grit to him, this edge that you just don't see. If you grew up in church, that's probably a huge blessing, but also maybe a little bit of a curse, If you're still borrowing your parents' faith, or you have a super specific vision of what the church has to be, and you complain every time it's not within that, right? I mean, if you think about the Pharisees, what was the difference? They grew up in church, they knew all the laws, knew all the rules, followed all of them, and they were the most miserable people on earth. No one liked them. And Jesus is like, yo, you're far from the kingdom, right? And so no matter where you are at, the kingdom is for everybody. Jesus says that when he ushers in the kingdom, it belongs to the poor in spirit, those who know their need for God and their humility. So your history or where you grew up is not your ceiling of what can be accomplished. Your conviction is. This is Caleb. If there's one thing you read, this guy just was built different. Just had a conviction that no one else seemed to conjure up to the level that he did. And he just knew that even if you didn't have a good past or a good history, you could start an amazing legacy. Number 2 then is legacy. You won't see most of what your faithfulness produces. This is true, even today. In the church planting world, we use this line. We say, you must be willing to plant trees that other people will pick fruit from. You plant a tree knowing I'm never going to get any of this fruit, but I think eventually maybe somebody will. When I lived in Tucson, Arizona, my first job as a youth pastor, I bought this house and had this little blood orange tree in the front. And Tucson is a literal desert. I mean, it is dirt. But citrus love it out there. They just love the sun, but you got to water them. And so I had this blood orange tree. It was really well established, and I was like, I'm going to plant some other stuff. I'm in Arizona. Why not grow some avocados and some other citrus? So I plant all these trees, and I'm just babying them every single day, watering them immensely, and they all just die every time. But my blood orange tree just was fine. Loved it. It was send me more dry days, right? Why? Because the tree had grown so long that the roots were established that it did not need this maintenance. But somebody had to, 20 years before I bought that house, be like, I'm going to plant this blood orange tree. And it's eventually going to become such a blessing to somebody. And I was hoping for the same thing, but I just could not, for the love of me, water and meticulously plant it enough. And that's why generational faithfulness matters, because the roots that you create are deeper than you'll ever imagine. It creates a stability that you can't even fathom right now. And I spent a lot of money on these trees that died. But I was hoping even $75 in, I'd love to have an avocado. The most expensive avocado of my life, although we're getting close to $75 an avocado. But that's the difference. And so you've got to be willing to say, what God is calling in me now may be great in the future, but I might never get to reap that reward. Somebody in this room is going to be a Caleb for somebody who's not born yet. And you don't always get to see what it produces, but that's not the point. Are you willing to plant a tree that other people will pick fruit from? The third one is just the sheer courage that he has to take the next step when everyone else doesn't want to. He almost doesn't even feel like he's thinking. You're almost like, this guy doesn't, he's not all there. He's a little wild. I love it. We spend so much time in church reflecting. We spend so much time pondering on the truths of God, and we don't do anything about it. Last week, we had a teaching up here, and I sit down with you and say, hey, what was it about? And you'd be like, and Ben did a great job. And you'd be like, it was about this. And I'm like, okay, did you do anything because of it? And I bet 95% of you would be like, no, I didn't do a thing. I actually forgot on Monday what it was about. until you asked me, and then I kind of remembered, right? Like taking the next step, not just the next thought. We oftentimes wait in church for our feelings to be sorted and our thoughts to be articulated perfectly so that we can feel justified when we make decisions. And you read the Bible, and you have tons of stories of people just walking out the next step of faithfulness when everyone else around them is like, whoa, have you seen the odds, the scenario, how tall, long these necks these people are? And he's like, yeah, I don't care. We have God, so what does this matter, right? Are we willing to make decisions like that, where we take a next step, even if we don't have it all sorted out? You know, we joke about today being the PB&J Sunday at Core and serving. Like, is there really anything you need to think about before you decide to serve our church on a Sunday when you're already here? Do you feel like you're not accountable, or you're lonely, or you want to learn more truths about God, and you want to be in His community, and you're not signing up for a group? Like, sometimes we are our own worst enemy in that. Like, we don't just take the next step. We don't ask God, what is that mountain, and how can I be faithful to the next step? And then the fourth and the last one, which some of you may really resonate with in this season, is this story of the wilderness for Caleb. This 38-year period of dealing with this promise that he held on to, that, is it going to come to fruition? And so some of you are in the middle of this story where you feel like, hey, I've been faithful and it hasn't produced what I thought it would. I've done the right thing and it's cost me, or I'm tired and I haven't seen God in it in the way I thought He would, or I thought He would say, and I'm starting to doubt if I even heard Him. And the text doesn't give us any indication of the 38 years and the 40 years of Caleb's life, but we know that when the moment came, he was like a laser to what he knew God had called him to. And so don't give up on the promise just because you're still in the middle. So Caleb, all summed up, he's an unsung hero because he had a wholehearted spirit and the courage to ask for the mountain for Hebron. And his story is a wholehearted spirit that refused to let go of what God had promised him. And so that's our invitation today. So if you're willing, you can close your eyes, and we like to open our hands and do it's a Come Holy Spirit prayer. We just pray out louder in our hearts, Come Holy Spirit, just inviting the person of the Spirit. It's a person. The best way to hang out with people is to hang out with them and talk to Him. So just inviting the Spirit to do what the Spirit does best, to speak truth in our life, to advocate for us, to encourage us to the truths of God. And I want to give you some questions that you can ask the Spirit in this moment for you. And maybe there's a point that you specifically resonated with. And so I have a question for each of these points. And you can pray these in your heart. And then we'll just give you some time. And then we can go into all the things we normally do in formation that'll eventually be on the screen behind me. But here's the questions in your open-hearted posture. If you felt a strong pull towards the belonging point, that the gospel, the kingdom is for everyone, you can ask God, is there something about who I am or where I came from that I'm still letting disqualify me from what you've promised? Maybe you felt attention for the legacy point. God, what am I doing right now that is building something for people who come after me? And what am I not doing that I should be doing? Maybe the courage piece for you. God, what is the mountain you've been pointing me toward that I keep walking past? And what is my next actual step toward it? And then lastly, in endurance. God, am I still wholehearted? Or has the wilderness worn something down in me that I need to bring back to you? So we'll just give you some space to be raw before God in this time. And then whenever you're ready at any point, you can partake in any of the four things we have on the screen. Then we'll close in a song in a few minutes.
There's no rush if you're needing more time to reflect or pray, or if you felt a stirring to go to the back and have someone pray over you. That means you probably should. You can let this time look like what it needs to look like for you. We are going to sing one more song, and you are welcome to join us when you're ready. Take me back to the garden. Lead me back to the moment I heard your voice. Take me back to communion. Lead me back to the moment I saw your face. And it was all so simple. It was easy to love. No space between us. It was easy to trust. 'Cause you are closer, closer than my skin. You are in the air I'm breathing in. Here's where the dead things come back to living. I feel my heart beating again. It feels so good to know you are my friend.
And this is the garden.
Here in the place I find you close.
This is communion.
Here in the place I'm fully known. And it was all so simple. You're so easy to love.
dead things come back to living. I feel my heart beating again. It feels so good to know you are my friend.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you that you take on the outsider, Lord. We just thank you that you've given us the inheritance of your kingdom, Lord, and we couldn't be more thankful for that. I pray that we can chase you wholeheartedly, Lord, and I pray that each and every day this week and to come, we just seek you and sit in your words and listen. And in your name, amen. All right, you can have a seat. I got a couple announcements. First, August 30th at 6:30 p.m. at the King, we have our volunteer training. So if you are a volunteer, or like today you felt called and you want to be a volunteer, this is for you. It's going to be covering every single different division of serving, and so be sure to be there. Next thing is next Sunday is Contrast 101 at the time of this service. So if you're looking to do the Contrast 101, it'll be during the 11:30 in the, I believe, the MPR. Yeah. And that's, if you're interested in attending a Contrast 101, it's just our DNA. It's who we are. It's what what the church wants to be, what our vision is, and what we do. Third is we have this coming Saturday at 9 a.m. at the King, we're moving in. So if you want to help us move some things into the King, get it ready, nice and looking good, that's for you too. And then we also have elder drop. No, we don't have elder drop-ins. That was last two services. And then lastly, don't forget to grab a PB&J on your way out and sign up to serve. With that, have a good week.